Hello everyone and welcome back to the virtual revision class on Network and Cybersecurity 15 EC 835. Today we will be revising Module 2 of our syllabus, which is Email Security. So these are the contents of Module 2, which includes Pretty Good Privacy. Second, secure multipurpose internet mail extension, which is also called as S/MIME, and domain keys identified mail. However, we will try covering 1.5 module for today. So as I previously mentioned in the contents, first in the list we have Pretty Good Privacy or PGP. Now this PGP is basically a service that is used in email, and the reason behind that is that the PGP provides confidentiality and authentication service that can be used for electronic mail and file storage applications, and hence it is used for securing emails. Next we have a table here which shows the services which are provided by PGP. So as you can see here in this table, we have 3 columns where the first column represents the function or service which is provided by PGP. The second column represents the algorithms used to implement each service, and the third column gives the description about the services. To give an example, the first function that is provided by the PGP is digital signature. So the algorithms used to implement this digital signature are DSS along with SHA or RSA along with SHA. And the way it is implemented is given in the third column, which is the description column, which says that a hash code of a message is created using SHA-1, which is nothing but the authentication algorithm. Then this message digest is encrypted using DSS or RSA with the sender's private key and then included with the message. So this was about the first function or the first service. Next we have message encryption, and the algorithms used here are CAST, which is CAST or IDEA, or 3-key triple DES with Diffie-Hellman or RSA. So these are the algorithms used for message encryption in PGP. Next, coming to the description, here a message is encrypted using CAST 128 or IDEA or 3DES with a one-time session key which is generated by the sender. Next, the session key is then encrypted using Diffie-Hellman or RSA with the recipient's public key and then included with the message. So this is how message encryption takes place, and clearly it is asymmetric in nature. Hence, two keys are used, public as well as private. Moving on to the next service, which is the compression. So algorithms used is zip, and the description is as follows, wherein a message may be compressed for storage or transmission using zip. Lastly, we have email compatibility, and the algorithms used here is Radix 64 conversion, and the description says that in order to provide transparency for email applications, an encrypted message may be converted to an ASCII string using the Radix 64 conversion. So what happens in Radix 64 conversion? An encrypted string is converted to an ASCII string. That's it. So this was about the services which are provided by PGP, which include digital signature, message encryption, compression, and finally email compatibility. Next we have the operational description of PGP. So here the actual operation of PGP as opposed to the management of keys consists of 4 services, that is authentication, confidentiality, compression, and email compatibility, as we have already seen in the previous slide in the table. So here in figure A, this figure basically shows the implementation of digital signature, which we already discussed, which in turn provides authentication. And so the steps involved here are as follows. We move from left to right to understand this particular diagram, alright? So here it is. Firstly, the sender creates a message M, then SHA-1 is used to generate a 160-bit hash code of the message. Nextly, the hash code is encrypted with RSA using the sender's private key, which is nothing but PRA. And then the result is prepended to the, which is nothing but. So this happens at the sender's side. Now moving on to the receiver's side or the destination B. The receiver uses RSA with the sender's public key, which is PUA, to decrypt and recover the hash code, which is H. The receiver also generates a new hash code for the message M and then compares it with the decrypted hash code. Here, if the two matches, then the message is accepted as authentic, which means that it has not been altered in the way of its transmission. So this was about implementation of authentication function. Moving on to figure B. Now this figure shows how confidentiality is achieved. So here again, at the sender generates a message M and a random 128-bit number which is to be used as a session key KS for this message only. Next, the message is then encrypted using cast 128 or IDEA or 3DES with the session key, which is nothing but KS. So KS is nothing but your session key. Next, the session key is then encrypted with RSA along with the recipient's public key, which is PUB, which is then prepended to the message M. So this all again happens at the sender's side. Now moving on to the receiver's side, the receiver uses the RSA with its private key, which is PRB, to decrypt and recover the session key, which is K. And then this particular session key will be used to decrypt the message, and hence we have the original message M at the receiver. Finally, the last figure shows the combination of both confidentiality and authentication. Let us see how this is done now. Firstly, a signature is generated for the plain text message and this is prepended to the message M. Then the plain text message plus signature is encrypted using any of the algorithms such as CAST128, IDEA or 3DES, that is triple DES. And then the session key is encrypted using either RSA or Algorithmic algorithm. Now this again happens at the sender's side, whereas at the receiver side, the opposite happens, which we have already discussed in the first two figures. So to summarize, when both the services such as confidentiality and authentication are used, then the sender first signs the message with its own private key, which is PRA, then encrypts the message with a session key, KS, and finally encrypts the session key with the recipient's public key, which is PUB. So after the operational description of PGP, we have transmission and reception of PGP messages, which basically shows the relationship of the services which we have discussed so far, such as digital signature, message encryption, compression, and email compatibility. So as you can see, there are two figures here. The first figure shows the transmission side and the second figure shows the reception side. So on the transmission side, in case if it is required, then a signature is generated using a hash code of the uncompressed plain text. Then the plain text plus the signature, if it is present, is compressed. Nextly, if confidentiality is required, then the block, which is the compressed plain text or compressed signature plus plain text, is encrypted and prepended with the public key, encrypted symmetric encryption key. And finally, the entire block is converted into the Radix 64 format. So this is about the transmission of messages at the sender side. Moving on to the receiver's side, here the incoming block is first converted back from Radix 64 format to binary. Then If the message is encrypted, the recipient recovers the session key and decrypts the message. Then the final resulting block is decompressed if compression is applied at the sender's side. Now, if the message is signed, the recipient recovers the transmitted hash code and compares it to its own calculation of the hash code. So this was how confidentiality and authentication was implemented in the transmission and reception of PGP messages, basically by making use of encryption algorithms and authentication algorithms or hash codes. Coming to the next slide, which is Secure Multipurpose Internet Mail Extension or SMIME. Now this SMIME is basically a technology that allows you to encrypt your emails. So you should know that by now that the technology that is used to encrypt your emails is nothing but SMIME. And since we know that there are two types of encryption schemes, symmetric and asymmetric, SMIME uses asymmetric cryptography to protect your emails from unwanted access. And not only this, it also allows you to digitally sign your emails to verify you as the legitimate sender of the message, thus making it an effective weapon against many phishing attacks, hence providing authentication. And lastly, SMIME is defined in a number of documents, but most importantly in RFCs, which range from 3370, 3850, 3851 and 3852. So this was about the overview of SMIME. Firstly, it is a technology that allows you to encrypt your emails. Secondly, it makes use of asymmetric cryptography, which means it makes use of two keys, private and public. And not only this, it also provides authentication by digitally signing your emails and verifying you as the legitimate user. Next we have RFC 5322, which is nothing but a document that defines a format for text messages which are sent using emails or electronic mails. Next, in reference to RFC 5322 context, the messages or emails are viewed as having an envelope and contents. So there are two components here when we talk about emails. They are envelope and content, where the envelope contains whatever information is needed to accomplish transmission and delivery, like the address of the sender and so on. And the contents compose the object to be delivered to the recipient, which is nothing but the body of the email. So in addition, the RFC 5322 we are talking about applies only to the contents and not to the envelope. So this is one point that you need to keep in mind, that RFC 5322 applies to the contents only. And finally, the content standard includes a set of header fields that may be used by the mail system to create the envelope. Having said that, let us now look at the example of a message that conforms to RFC 5322. So a message consists of some number of header lines, which is called the header, which in turn is followed by an unrestricted text which is called the body. So a message has two parts, the header and the body. Now the header is separated from the body by a blank line. So as you can see here in this example, the first four lines is the header and the text below it, which starts with hello, is nothing but your body. And clearly the header is separated from the body by a blank line. Then a header line usually consists of a keyword followed by a colon. For example, as you can see in the first four lines, it starts like from, to, subject and date, and all these keywords are followed by a colon. Whereas the content or the body consists of a text. This is basically the message that you want to send to the receiver. So this was about the message format. Next we have MIME or Multipurpose Internet Mail Extensions, which is an extension to the RFC 5322 framework that is basically intended to address some of the problems and limitations of the use of Simple Mail Transfer Protocol or SMTP. So then there are few elements in the MIME specification that we need to know. Like the first one, 5 new message header fields are defined here, which may be included in an RFC 5322 header. Now these fields provide information about the body of the message. Then the next element is that a number of content formats are defined, thus standardizing representations that support multimedia electronic mail. And finally, transfer encodings are defined that enable the conversion of any content format into a form that is protected from alteration by the mail system, thereby providing confidentiality and authentication. So this was about the elements of MIME. So as I mentioned in the previous slide about the 5 new header fields, let's look into each in detail here. So the 5 header fields are namely the MIME version, content type, content transfer encoding, content ID and content description. Let us look into each in detail. So firstly coming to MIME version. Now this MIME version must have the parameter value of 1. So this is one thing that you need to remember here, that the value in the MIME version field should be 1. And this field basically indicates that the message conforms to RFCs 2045 and 2046. Next we have the content type. Now this content type basically describes the data which is contained in the body with sufficient detail that the receiving user agent can pick an appropriate agent or mechanism to represent the data to the user or deal with the data in an appropriate manner. So this is about the content type. Next, the content transfer encoding indicates the type of transformation that has been used to represent the body of the message in a way that is acceptable for mail transport. Then we have the content ID, which is used to identify MIME entities uniquely in multiple contexts. And finally, the content description is nothing but a text description of the object with the body that is useful when the object is not readable. For example, the audio data. So this was about PGP and SMIME briefly. Now the remaining parts we shall discuss in the next class. Thank you.